Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. It feels like everyone at some point has the same question. Am I on track with my retirement savings? How much should I have saved by now? The problem is there isn't one perfect answer. Even the experts don't agree. A lot of materials we see out there from Fidelity, Rowe Price, JP Chase are all attempts to answer that question. But remember, these checkpoints are created by humans. And these humans are influenced by the companies they work for, by their own experiences, and the assumptions they have to make when writing for the masses, not individuals. Rowe Price takes a flexible range-based approach instead of one number per age. The checkpoints look like this. By the age of 30, you would have half 1 year's salary saved up. By the age of 40, 1.5 to 2.5 times your annual salary. By the age of 50, 3.5 to 5.5 times your salary. By the age of 60, 6 to 11 times your salary. And by the age you retire, 65 in this example, it's 7.5 to 13.5 times your annual income. So here's the fine print. The assumption that these ranges are built on. They assume that you're saving 15% of your income, and that 15% can be combined between your contributions and your employer contributions. They also assume that you get a 5% annual increase in your pay all the way through the age of 45. After the age of 45, they assume that you get a 3% annual increase in pay. They assume that you can capture a 7% annual rate of return in a tax-deferred account. They also assume you retire at the age of 65 and that you withdraw 4% of your portfolio for a 30-year retirement. They also assume that your spending in retirement is 5% less than your pre-retirement years or your working years, and they do factor in Social Security into the equation as well. So how should we read this range? Think of the lower end as someone who might have more outside support, as in Social Security might cover a greater share of your expenses in retirement, or that you had a lower income, and so these savings targets were harder to hit. The higher end of the range might be higher income earners who are able to save more aggressively and expect a lower Social Security payout and know that their investments will do more of the carrying of their income in their retirement years. They need a larger multiple to support a higher withdrawal. So why does this spread widen in your 50s and 60s? When you look at these ranges, you'll notice that they get larger and more aggressive as you go on with time. Number one is replacement math. Higher earners simply need to save more aggressively because they know Social Security is going to replace a smaller share of their spending in retirement. We also have sequence or return risk. As you get close to retirement, you need more of a cushion so that a bad market year doesn't derail your plan. There's also a behavioral reality. If you've saved less than 15% of your income along the way, you know you're going to have to get a bit more aggressive to catch up. And finally, simply compounding. By the time you hit your 50s or your 60s, compounding is really starting to take over. Your growth from your portfolio alone soon outpaces the contributions you're making, and this is really something that you notice when you're several decades into investing. So this steep shift in ranges isn't a moving goalpost. It's a shift from your savings driving your portfolio to compounding and your money work harder being the driving force of your portfolio. Let's do an example. Let's say you have a household income of $100,000 at the age of 65. So the target savings here would be $750,000 to $1.35 million. Using a 4% withdrawal, you'd pull $30,000 to $54,000 a year from your portfolio. If we add in a Social Security benefit, say roughly $32,000 a year for a $100,000 earner at full retirement age, this household would have a total income of $62,000 to $86,000 per year, roughly 62 to 86% of a pre-retirement income. And this is exactly why Rowe Price gives a range. Everyone's spending is different in retirement. Maybe you're a higher spender. Maybe you're more modest. It depends on what your expenses look like and what you need to fulfill that. But again, just like with the Fidelity benchmarks, there's a nuance here. If you're in a dual income earning household or simply a household that has two individuals who collect Social Security benefits, well, suddenly you might not need to pull so much from your portfolio. Your Social Security benefits might make up a greater share of your pre-retirement income, and this really can take the pressure off your investments. The pros with this approach are that it can be flexible and realistic. These ranges acknowledge different incomes, different savings rates, and different spending targets in retirement. Also, it's more spending driven rather than income driven. When you get beyond a single multiple and look at a range, it allows you to more closely look at your spending rather than just your income. The cons are a steep late career climb. If you fall behind in your mid-career or you find yourself behind, say, in your 50s, it can feel really impossible to get to 10x your income. For some, this path assumes aggressive returns. What if you can't capture a 7% annualized rate of return? Well, then you might find that your portfolio doesn't keep pace with these ranges. It really depends on how you invest and where you invest. You might ask yourself, where do you fall on this range? Well, if you're a lower income earner or you have a more modest savings rate or you expect Social Security to replace a greater share of your income in retirement, you can probably target the lower end of the range. If you're a higher income earner, you have a more aggressive savings rate, or you simply expect Social Security to replace a lower share of your income in retirement, aim for the higher end of this range. The key here is that you want to be saving consistently throughout the course of your entire working career and working towards financial freedom. But there is no one right path and there is no one right answer. These are just to be used as a general guide to help you know if you're on the right track.